Today on Let's Talk Schools, we talk about the possibility of redistricting. How and why does it affect you, and what you need to know. Welcome to Let's Talk Schools. I'm Mike Loney, the Superintendent of Schools, and it's Let's Talk Redistricting this week. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and then we'll get into the mix of the redistricting conversation.
I am Ingrid Huff. I'm the former Executive Director of Operational Planning, now the Deputy Chief Operations Officer for Fulton County Schools.
And how long have you been with the district? Tell us something about yourself.
I have been here. November will be 25 years.
Oh my goodness, 25 years. Did you go to elementary school here? Are you counting that?
No, I started in 1998.
Okay, so we know that our district is growing asymmetrically. We have some places where the population is declining. We have some places where the population is increasing. So what does that mean to us?
So that means right now that we have some imbalances in enrollment. We are tracking development, we are tracking in and out migration, but our district as a whole is starting to decline a little bit, but we do have pockets of growth where we are seeing some spikes in enrollment.
So can you just describe for us how you know when developments are coming, how many families they are projected to provide housing for? How does that work? Give us some of the behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So our enrollment projections include tracking development, of course, working with our municipal partners. Mm-hmm. So all of our municipal planning agencies provide data to us on rezoning cases. We track redevelopment all the way from redevelopment request all the way to occupancy. Okay. We have a third-party vendor that also provides sales, so quarterly housing sales. We track that data as well. So we take that into account when we project student population.
Okay, so if someone is going to build a new neighborhood, mm-hmm. or a new apartment complex, sure. They make application to the cities. And then we're informed of that, and you work directly with the developers to kind of crunch the numbers and produce a projection. Is that how that works?
Yes, with those municipal planning agencies, we provide what's called impact assessments back to the cities, and then they take into account whether they approve that development. We then take that information and incorporate it into our forecast projections to determine how many elementary, middle, and high school students we'll have for each region. Mm-hmm. And we also track that by high school attendance boundaries because every community is a little bit different, and we have what's called student yield. So we're able to determine how many elementary and middle and high school students are generated from each subdivision.
Now, Shirley, I appreciate the hard work that you do, and I know you work hard at it, but you can't be that accurate, can you? I mean, how close do you get on an annual basis? So, are you within 10%?
Within plus or minus 1%.
1%?
Absolutely, yes.
You mean you can accurately forecast student enrollment numbers by school within 1%?
Yes, we have been very accurate in the past, with the exception of COVID, which threw us a monkey wrench there. Yeah, but we have been within that plus or minus 1% accuracy for numerous years.
That's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
You must have some really powerful software and analytical abilities to come that close. So since we have these imbalances, and we have some schools that are over capacity, some under, we now have a board policy, or we've had a board policy that says when that happens that we should reconsider making them more balanced.
Correct.
Which is called the bad word redistricting.
So we have had a policy in place since 2000 that defines how we balance that enrollment. The board at that time defined a policy regarding attendance boundary changes. So we have primary and secondary criteria that we use with the community's input to develop new attendance boundaries.
Okay, so we are anticipating having those conversations this fall.
Absolutely.
And so talk us through the process. We're going to start having some conversations. School has now started, so we're going to start having those conversations now, working through, I don't know when. When?
Yes, so our first meetings are in the latter part of August. So we do a first information session. That's Redistricting 101. We'll come to the community, we'll share all of our data elements, how the process works, what their roles are, what is in scope and what is out of scope. So again, those criteria determine how we adjust boundaries. So we'll share all the information. We're very transparent. We will bring parents along the way as we start redistricting. Of course, we start with no maps. We begin the process asking questions. So we'll have our first round of meetings in North and South Fulton in September. And then we'll come back after we receive their feedback based on a series of questions related to the criteria. And then we'll have 2 more rounds where we actually will have alternative maps that the community will review and give us feedback.
Okay, so you said Redistricting 101. That sounds like a college course. So folks sign up, or they just go to one of those meetings, and you describe, or folks describe what the process is like.
Absolutely. We'll tell them how the process works. We'll show them the actual data that we use. So we've done this for numerous years. And there's a lot of questions around neighborhood groupings, what factors you consider, traffic patterns. So we'll show them how that data incorporates how we develop the maps. So we'll walk them through all of the process and show them how we take their comments into consideration and develop attendance boundary alternatives.
Okay. So if I live very close to a school, as an example, I'm in walking distance to a school, quarter of a mile, 200 yards.
Sure.
Are those the kinds of factors that get considered?
Yes.
In these conversations?
Yes. So primary criteria are projected enrollment,
Okay.
capacity, and then proximity, how close you are to a school site. Of course, everyone doesn't always attend their first closest school, but we have an algorithm through GIS that determines for each neighborhood what your first, second, and third closest school are.
Okay.
We want to be forward-looking, so we look at not only what the population is today, but what the population is in 3 years, so we're not moving students multiple times, where a school may in the very near future become overcrowded again.
Okay.
And then we look at space, so how many seats, how many classrooms are in a building, and primary criteria determines about 70% of an attendance boundary.
Okay.
It's the remaining 30 that's a little bit more subjective that we use what's called secondary criteria. So things like travel patterns, how frequently neighborhoods have been rezoned, which really isn't an issue for us now, but also those neighborhood groupings, traffic patterns. So what's your easiest mode of travel to get to a school site? If parents are headed towards a major artery, we want to make sure that we're considering that as we choose schools for that community. And then we also have balancing special programs. So those are things that, those are classrooms that require a smaller class size. So we take those into consideration, as well as feeder pattern. We want to ensure that if we split students going from elementary to middle or middle school to high school, that we have a proportionate number of students in those feeds.
Okay, so it sounds like a pretty complex process, honestly.
It is. There are a lot of data elements that are included in the analysis.
And so we know that there will be some redistricting, and I know that you indicated no maps have been drawn, no decisions have been made.
No.
And the first thing we're doing is talking about the process, engaging the community.
Absolutely.
And then from those conversations, we start talking about where adjustments might need to be made.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we will, in the first meeting again, we'll ask a series of questions. From those questions and the feedback that we receive, we will then develop maps around that 30% margin.
Okay.
And we'll come back to the community in round 2, and we typically have 3 alternative maps for each level. So there'll be an elementary, middle, and high school as we look at these alignments of these boundaries for each area. So we're in North Fulton and South Fulton for this redistricting. And then in the third round of meetings, we'll take the feedback that parents provide us in round 2 and develop a final draft plan. Parents, again, will talk about what they like about that map related to the criteria, what they don't like, and then we'll come back with a final recommendation to the board.
Right. So I know redistricting, I've had to live this, in several of my positions along the way. I know that this is always an emotional topic.
Absolutely.
For parents. So the first question, am I going to be impacted? That's the question that seems at least based on my experience, that people always ask, am I going to be impacted? And so how do we answer that question at this juncture?
So at this point, we don't know.
Okay.
So it's best to stay tuned, stay apart. We have multiple options for parents to attend. So of course we have our in-person meetings. In North Fulton, that location is Alpharetta High School. In South Fulton, it's at Langston Hughes High School. But parents also have an opportunity to provide feedback in an online forum after the meetings.
Okay.
So we post everything related to redistricting on our website. Parents can attend virtually and still be a part of that process, but it's very important to stay abreast of what's going on, watch the website, attend the meetings, because we really can't predict who will be impacted at this time.
Right. Can you at least give some indication? Do you think that we're going to redistrict everybody, or do you think this is going to be, more selective redistricting based on these imbalances?
Yes, I think the redistricting will be focused on where those imbalances exist. So it will not be full scale. We're not juggling a lot of students around. That's not our intent. We only want to create opportunities where we have imbalances to fix those.
Right. So it's not fair for kids to have to go to a school that's tremendously overcrowded.
Correct.
When there's another school nearby that has less crowdedness and students have more access to the resources. That makes sense to me.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so the best thing that parents can do at this juncture is stay informed.
Stay informed.
And the way they stay informed is ask their school principal about meetings coming up, go to the district website. Yes. Where specifically on the website?
So our main web page, so www.fultonschools.org/redistricting. We have a full page dedicated to redistricting. You can actually go online and see past redistrictings and how those played out. All the data elements are there. There's actually a video that describes the process on our website. And then there's a section that has the North Fulton page, which is specific to North Fulton attendance boundaries, and South Fulton redistricting, which is specific to the South Fulton effort.
Right. So the board is expected, the school board members are expected to formalize a decision this school year?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will make a recommendation in November. Okay. And so that will be the initial reading of that recommendation, and then they will approve the boundaries in December.
Okay.
Yes.
And when will the redistricting actually take effect?
So it will take effect August 2023. And the good thing about our policy, we have a grandfathering clause.
I was going to ask you that,
yes.
So tell us about the grandfathering.
So grandfathering at elementary schools and middle school students in their highest grade. So if you're impacted and you're a rising 5th or 8th grader, you have the option to remain at your current school. Parents do have to provide transportation, but you can stay in your current attendance boundary. At high school, if you are physically in the building, so if you're a 9th, 10th or 11th grader and you're impacted by redistricting, you can remain at your current high school for the next year until you graduate.
What about siblings? So if I'm a rising 8th grader and I have a sibling that's a 6th grader or 7th grader?
So unfortunately, if they're not a part of that clause, so in that specific grade level, it would not be applicable to siblings.
Okay. All right. So we have a busy fall.
Absolutely.
Parents need to stay informed.
Stay informed, absolutely.
Don't panic right now because it's probably not going to impact that many folks. But if you are impacted, it's very personal. Everybody loves their child's school.
Of course.
There's a connection there, and change is always difficult.
Yes, it is.
I know this is a hard topic. Thank you so much for all that your work. Thank you for being so accurate with your projections so that when we do make these difficult decisions, we can count on them impacting just the right number of families and not throwing everybody in upheaval.
That is certainly our intent. Thank you, Dr. Lenny.
Thank you so much for joining Let's Talk Schools. Ingrid, thank you once again.
Thank you.
And now, let's go around the district in 90 seconds. That's it for our show this week. Let's keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear from you on our social media platforms. Join us next time on Let's Talk Schools. Thank you for watching.